Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Joseph Galli. And Joseph and I have known each other for a couple of years, got introduced through mutual friends. And when I found out what Joseph is doing with his organization and some of the things that he's involved in, I became extremely intrigued by not only what he was doing, but more importantly, why he was doing that. We're here talking about charitable donations today. We're here talking about donations of life insurance today, and we might get into some of the details about how that works. But Joseph, I'd love for you to be able to maybe expand on what you do and perhaps why you do it.
Super. Mike, thanks a lot and great to see you again and look forward to grabbing coffee together when I'm in Vancouver next. It's maybe just by way of background, I spent 35 years as a merchant banker doing M&A, turnaround, and investment. And Christmas Eve 2009, two of my three boys who were 15 and 13 were diagnosed with a rare genetic disease that was life shortening. And so they were 15, 13, and their life expectancy was 27. So that was a big shock, and essentially made a decision that day to retire from my corporate finance world and focus on keeping them alive for as long as possible with the best quality of life as possible. And so in 2010, with two other families, started this foundation, which is called Loeys-Dietz Syndrome Foundation of Canada, which is named after the two researchers that discovered the genes. And the idea was that when I did an assessment of the charitable marketplace in Canada, charities have always operated the same way for the past 50 years, and it's very much rinse and repeat. And so there's, just to give you a sense, there's 85,000 charities in Canada.
Wow.
And yeah, and think about how many golf tournaments have you sponsored? How many gala dinners have you bought? And likewise, so we do that for our buddies, right? Because we want to support our community. But the model is broken because they don't have balance sheets. And to give you some stats, out of the 85,000, 150 charities, not 1,500, 150 charities of the 85,000 get 38% of all the funding in the country, okay, from a donation. So you think about this skewed, population, and then you think about how many golf tournaments, the many of the charities become more event planners than they are driving research or driving patient support. So when I looked at that, and it's not because their hearts are not in the right place, their hearts are in the right place. Just they've used the same model over and over. And if we had a golf tournament today and there was a storm, and half the people didn't show up to the golf tournament and you were expecting to make $500,000 and all of a sudden you're making $50,000, well, what do you do for the next 6 months of your operations, right? You're in trouble. It's like, thinking about the person that lives paycheck to paycheck, right? And then they lose their jobs. So we looked at this model and said that model doesn't make sense. So that's the first piece when you think about the economic driver of the system. The second piece was that we looked and said, how can we affect change? And so the only way you can affect change is by thinking about what your currencies are. And I use business jargon and philanthropy, and it kind of pisses people off because they say, well, this is not a business. And I say, actually, it is a business like everything else. And I said, you have to think about it as to what your KPIs are, what your key performance indicators are. And we have two KPIs that drive every decision we make, and that's how do we help our patients to live longer and how do we give them a better quality of life. So everything we do has to address one or both of those two KPIs. Okay.
Mhm, mhm.
So that's the starting point. So the question then became, what are the currencies that we bring to the table? And the first currency we bring is capital. So like many other charities, we write checks, right? And we'll bring money to a situation. But the second currency we bring is we deal with the smartest people in the world. These are by far the smartest people in the world. They're super smart here. Over here and over here, they're not so smart. Okay. They have a hard time finding them, their way out of a wet paper bag. And I say that with love because a lot of them become very close friends of mine. And if you think about it, if you were going for surgery today, open heart surgery, you want your surgeon to be an inch wide and a mile deep. You don't want your surgeon to be an inch deep and a mile wide, right? So it makes sense that's the type of personality you're dealing with. Consequently, the things that we as business people do, and if you think about your clients and you think about the other advisors, problem solving, objective setting, resource allocation, networking, finding and bringing together and collaborating. Those are all things we do in our sleep because in business and in our general lives, those are things you have to do. So we realized early on that in order to effect change, we need to take these really, really bright people and bring all of the what we call getting things done around. So I'll give you an example of that. For the past 25 years, the pediatric cardiology community in Canada has wanted to build a registry, which is a fancy term for a database. And why you want that is, Mike, you as a researcher comes to me and says, "Hey, Joe, I want to do research." And you say, "Can you give me the data on the population?" Right? So think about a car and gasoline. Cars need gasoline to function. Okay. Researchers, clinicians, surgeons are cars. Their gasoline is data.
Data, yeah.
Okay, so think about it in that context. So you come to me, you want to do research, you say, "Here's the data." And I said, "I'm sorry, but our patients have died and nobody collected the data." And so now you have this chicken and egg situation going around. So how do you break it? You build a registry. And we started it, we took on the project 5 years ago. And remember, they've been trying to do this for 25 years. We launched it a year ago. And today we have 90% of all the pediatric cardiologists in Canada on our platform. Okay.
Amazing.
In the next 24 months, we'll bring the adult cardiology community onto the platform, which means now I'll take a child from birth right through to whatever age they go till. And in 24 months after that, I'll bring all of the aortic surgeons in Canada on the platform. So now I'm going to have a holistic picture of these from birth all the way through, and we call that longitudinal. We had to bring finance, we had to bring privacy, we had to bring cyber, we had to bring technology, we had to bring HR. We brought all the pieces together, brought our super smart people and said, "Here's all the pieces you need to be able to launch this." Okay. So that's the second currency, which we call getting things done. We bring all the resources to the table. The third currency is relevancy. So, Mike, you're a young researcher. You apply for a grant, and they're
I
going to say,
appreciate the fact that you think I'm young, but
"You are, buddy." Compared to me, you're a puppy still. So you're still a little baby. So everything's relative. But you're a young researcher, and you spend 30-40% of your time on the computer filling in applications for a 10% probability of success. Okay, lousy ROI when you think about it. It's not a good ROI. So when you go to apply for a grant, the question they're going to say is, "Hey, Mike, Dr. Mike, what's the relevancy of your research to this patient population?" And you're going to say, "Well, I hope, I think that. If you partner with us, we're going to laser focus your research to where it's going to be relevant, and we'll bring the patient population as well as the data." What that means for you is your probability of getting funded goes up dramatically. So we become an enhancer or a force optimizer here to be able to help you to get funding. Okay.
because it's
So
all
those
about the
are,
relevancy.
it's all about relevancy, Mike. So one, we bring capital, which other foundations do. Two, we think of ourselves of innovative leaders where we go out and actually assemble all the resources required and manage it. So if we put $1 in of hard dollars, we might put in $3 of everything else when you think about it, but to bring all of those resources. So a tremendous amount of leverage that we can bring to the table. And then thirdly, we bring the relevancy to the research, which increases your probability of funding. So that's our business model that we deploy with respect to how the foundation runs. And any questions on that? Are we okay like that?
No, that's awesome.
Okay.
I'm shocked at the asymmetry of charitable donations in Canada. There's that many charities that are operating,
Yeah.
and the vast majority, it's almost like a what the NDP might suggest is wealth asymmetry in Canada.
There is a charity asymmetry. There's a donation asymmetry for sure. For sure. 100% right. It's a good way of putting it. I never thought about it in that terminology, but it's exactly what there is. So that's how our foundation operates. And as a result of that, we're different. We're sometimes we're a little bit of the bull in the china shop, which can be good and bad depending on who you're talking to. We often get calls from doctors, surgeons, and clinicians who say, "I can't get this done in my institution. Can you help me?" And why? Because we become the go-to guys and gals that they know we can find a solution or we can become a catalyst for change in their organization. So that's our positioning as a foundation. Some of the services that we provide as a conciergerie service. So, if your child were to be, or yourself were to be diagnosed, we do something called a head to toe. So what you would call a gap analysis in finance for your clients, right? We do a gap analysis from a medical standpoint. And it takes 2 hours to go through a patient from literally head to toe, every body system, and we look at what's affected in their system and the such. We recommend they build a team. We often recommend that they have to fire part of their team and hire a new team because their team doesn't understand the disease, and we don't want to kill the child or the patient. That's led us to building multidisciplinary clinic partnerships across the country. So we have partnerships now where we can send our patients to a clinic that understands the disease and knows what the protocols are to deal with the disease. So those are some of, and we have a whole bunch of other services that we've developed for the patient population. Those are our currencies. Those are some of our services. The question, and really, and I appreciate the opportunity and the forum to be here. The question then is, how do you finance all of that? And this leads us to essentially our, we were talking about our elevator pitch before, our elevator pitch. And I actually did this. I was at a conference and, you have a badge and it says, hi, my name is Joe and my name is Mike. And we were getting in the elevator and I had to get the guy, I was going to the 16th, he was going to the 20th floor. And I said, here's what we do. And I said, essentially, we fund medical research and patient support through the donation of lapsing life insurance policies, which he then said, whoa, what does that mean? And by the time we got to the 16th floor, when I got off, he says, this is the best elevator pitch I've ever heard. He said, right. So I tell my team all the time, you got to remember just that. What do? We fund medical research, patient support. And by the way, we fund medical research in cancer, cardiology, pediatric spine, pregnancy, GI, allergy, inflammation, and mental health. So think about 98% of the stuff that kills you, we were involved in some capacity or another from a
What I
funding
loved
standpoint.
about your whole platform, Joe, is the fact that it seems very transferable to other sources or sectors of charitable giving in Canada. Not
Yeah.
only are you doing things completely radically, and the radicalness of what you're doing really makes the change, right? What I see is effectiveness. What I see, even to the point of data collection, relevancy. To be relevant as a charitable organization in this country, you have to think outside the box. And I think that's one of the things that you and your team have done exceptionally well, is
Thank
just
you.
take this different approach, which is, pretty much the reason why we're having this conversation to begin with. So
Well,
um,
thank you.
let's maybe move into the idea of charitable donations. What assets can be donated, and then we'll specifically later on talk about this idea of how to donate a lapsing life insurance policy, because I don't even think people really understand the language of what a lapsing life insurance policy really is. So let's talk about kind of more traditional donations and credits and things in the Canadian system. And then let's move into the life insurance piece. So why don't you
Sure.
go ahead and talk about,
Yeah.
donations in general?
So think about donations. You would have events. So, you go to a gala dinner, go to a golf tournament, go to a walk, go to a rally. You buy a ticket or make a contribution as a team, depending on the activity. So that's a very traditional model that a lot of the foundations use. It's also good for marketing because it shows presence in the community, right? You're doing something, you're raising the banner, which is very critical, which provides hope to the community, really, which is what you're part of what you're trying to do. On top of that, there's cash donations. And then you've got things like bequests. So if you think about the planned giving marketplace, Mike, all the big institutions have planned giving officers, and their job is to go out and say, hey, Mike, when you pass away, why don't you consider leaving a bequest in your will? It could include a life insurance policy that, you either have or was taken out with a specific emphasis on that in specific charity. So those are your kind of your normals, if you'd like, donation strategies and models. Our objective, our BHAG, our big hairy audacious goal, is to get to a $500 million endowment fund. Okay. So, and this leads, I'm going to answer you by taking a little detour, but I'm going to come back to your question. So why 500 million? Because there's something called the golden rule that my father and the generations before us taught us, which is he who has the
You as the
gold
gold makes the rules.
makes the rules. And if you think about a bureaucratic system like the healthcare system, the only way you're going to affect change is through bringing capital to the table
Yeah.
and leadership. Okay. So then I said, okay, if we had 500 million as an endowment fund and we earned over a long period of time a pension seven, which means a 7% return, which is what everybody in their pension funds is hoping to earn so they can pay our pensions down the road. If you were in a pension seven, that's 35 million per year, right? 7%, 500 million, 35 million per year. We're tax exempt, so that means you can then deploy the full 35 million. We figured out a way to lever that 4 to 1. So now you could deploy 140 million per year of medical research dollars without touching the economic engine. Okay, that's the key. So when you think about it and say, okay, I can deploy 140 million without touching the economic engine, I now have sustainability and longevity. I've now built a model that's not dependent on a golf tournament or a gala dinner tonight. Right? That's the long term. When I'm going to go, leave this earth, I want to make sure that I've got the right people and economic engine in place to be able to execute and continue the mission. That's really what it's about. So then the next question becomes, how do you build a $500 million endowment fund? And the only way to do that is through life insurance donations. Okay. So then the question becomes, okay, well, how does the life insurance donation market work? And out of the 85,000 charities, over 1,000 have accepted life insurance donations. How do I know? Because they fill in a form called a 3010 T3010, which is their tax filing. And in there, you have to say whether or not you take life insurance donations. So that's how we know that there's over 1,000 charities in Canada that have taken life insurance donations. The traditional model is, Mike, congratulations, you're now a successful businessman. We'd like you to, the local hospital says we'd like you to donate $1 million to our new building fund. Okay. And Mike says, ooh, I love you guys, but I don't have $1 million. They say, no problem. We've got Mary over here, and Mary is a life insurance advisor, and we've set up a program, and she will sell a life insurance policy for $1 million death benefit on your life, Mike. You're 45 years old. You're going to die in 40 years from now, and you're going to pay the premiums on that policy, either a 20 pay or life pay, which means you're going to pay for 20 years or for life. And at the end of 45 years from now or 40 years from now, the hospital will get that money. Okay. So Mike is happy because Mike just joined the $1 million donor club. So now he gets invited to all the cocktails. He's doing the rounds, and he's on the $1 million circuit in his community. So Mike's happy. Mary is happy because as the advisor, she just sold a policy and she gets her compensation on the policy. Okay, so she's happy. The life insurance company is happy because they say, hey, this is fantastic. Like, we're good community, citizens. Great. 10 years from now, your spouse says to you, honey, we need money for university for the kids. So you call up, that premium that you're paying every year, you call up the hospital and you say, look, I love you guys, but for the next 6 years, I need the premium money to pay for university. So they have three choices now. That's it. Choice number one is they pay the premiums. Most foundations don't have the economic backbone to do it, or the cash flow, or the mandate. So that's the first piece. The second piece is they find a replacement donor. So they go into the community of their donor pool and they say, hey, listen, would you like to pay the premiums on Mike's life for the next 6 years, 10 years, whatever it happens to be? Very difficult sell. The third is they lapse the policy. The policy cancels. So if you look at the traditional model, there was very high cancellation rate over time.
Hmm.
So if you look at the benefit in 40 years from now, the benefit's not there. So we looked at this and said, that doesn't make any sense. How do you build a $500 million endowment fund if the model in itself doesn't perform the way you want it to perform in terms of our objectives? So we then looked at lapsing life insurance policies. And so just to give you a sense of the size, the scope, if you look at death benefit in Canada, and everybody died at 4 o'clock this afternoon in Canada, it's $5.7 trillion with a T, okay, of death benefit. That's how much death benefit is out there. If you look at how much what is called term policies versus permanent policies, or you look at term policies for people over 65, there's north of $7 billion of cancellations per year of death benefit.
Wow.
Okay. And that excludes term riders and perm. I'm just talking term policies themselves. So think about, okay, I've got a $7 billion pool every year of death benefit that's lapsing. So the question then became, how could we go into that pool and find basically donors that have already made a decision to lapse? So we'll never influence anybody to lapse a policy. They've made a decision. They call you up, Mike, and say, listen, I don't need that policy anymore. I can't afford that policy. 90% is they don't need it. 10% is I can't afford it. Okay, grosso modo, that's kind of your split. So they say to you, I've been paying for this policy. If it was a business policy, it might have been because they had a loan with the BDC or Royal Bank or whoever, and they needed to cover it. It might have been for a mortgage, might have been for a buy-sell agreement, might have been just for estate planning, right? So you have all of this pool of policies that every year are lapsing. So the question then became, could we monetize some of those by looking at a shorter longevity? So by looking at people with a shorter longevity, and it's no different if Mike, if I said to you, I'm going to give you $100 in 5 years, right? And I said, how much do you want today for that $100? You'd say, Joe, $100. My discount rate is I'm making up a number, 5%. I want $92 today, right? It's just the net present value of that future revenue stream.
Yeah.
So we said, conceptually, if somebody's going to die in 7, 10, whatever number of years, could I do the net present value of that stream? And that's what the actuaries do. The actuaries actually calculate through what's called the fair market value calculation, the future value of that policy to today, and they're able to put a value on what's the value of that policy as a donation. And CRA has a whole, the Canadian Institute of Actuaries and CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, have a whole prescribed model on how you calculate all of that. So it's nothing to do with us, whether it's another charity or ourselves, it's the same calculation. So what that means is that if you are able to go and find people that fit your profile and the IRR, the internal rate of return that you're looking for, then you can build a pool that eventually will lead to 500 million net, our BHAG, right? Coming back to our BHAG.
Your
That's what
big,
we're
hairy,
looking for.
audacious goal.
Yes, sir. Exactly. And that's the North Star. Everybody everybody in our organization we have a couple of teams. One team is only doing research and medical patient support, and I have another team that's doing all of the fundraising. And at the end of the day, I said, look, guys, we're not in the insurance donation business. We're in the medical fundraising business. Okay. That's our business. We just happen, and if we could sell pencils on the street corner and raise 500 million, we'd sell pencils on the street corner and raise 500 million. It's not because we're in love with life insurance, but it is the only way to do this at scale, right? Conceptually. So everybody goes through a medical underwriting, which is essentially a telehealth call for 20 minutes. They sign a medical consent form, and then we order a full APS, which is jargon for medical records. Okay. That allows our medical underwriter, who's a licensed medical underwriter who works for the whole industry, it allows them, the licensed medical underwriter, to come back to us and tell us the longevity number. I'm going to say something that's going to blow your mind and your listeners' mind. We're wrong 100% of the time. We're wrong 100% of the time. Because a longevity calculation is 50% science and 50% art.
Yes.
You say you're going to live 20 years and you live 2. You say you're going to live 10 years and you live 30. Right? And we see that all the time. So we know that we're wrong, but we know that if we're wrong enough times under the right model, we'll be right. Right. And which is the concept of life insurance. If you think about it, it's no different than what a life insurance company does, where it has a pool of lives and says, well, the standard mortality for this pool should be this, but some are going to die sooner, some are going to die longer, but on average, it's going to be this.
Yeah,
right?
It's basically impossible to determine when a single person will pass, but actuarially, we can predict within a reasonable average time frame when a group of people will likely pass. So
Correct.
you're wrong on an individual basis 100% of the time, probably. Hopefully, they're going to outlive your prediction, but on average, you're going to get it right.
And that's the thesis, and so far it's working that way, right? But and we applied the same actuarial logic that they do to a life insurance or a pension or an annuity. We didn't go and create anything new. We said, okay, if it works there, what do we have to do to make it work here? Same type of thing. So there's something called the 3-10 rule, Mike, which is the 3-year, 10-year rule in CRA, which says that if you had a term policy that was in force for 3 years and 1 day, hence the 3 of the 3-10, and was not intended for philanthropy purposes. It was buy, sell, it was mortgage, it was liability, it was estate planning, whatever. And by the way, that's 99.9% of all the policies, okay, out there, is not intended for philanthropy. You can donate the term and get a tax receipt for the fair market value of a perm. So I'll repeat that. You can donate the term with a disposition of 0 and get the fair market value tax receipt for the equivalent of permanent policy. And that's just the net present value. So the shorter the longevity, the higher the value of the tax receipt. So it's, remember my $100 5 years from now example?
Yeah.
It's that example, right? Basically saying. So that's how we started. We started 7 years ago. We have now done 101 million of death benefit in the 7 years. We don't do every policy. We only actually do 1 in 5 because we have a hurdle, an IRR hurdle that we have to meet. But everybody goes through the exact same process: telehealth call, medical underwriting, actuarial underwriting. And so we're very disciplined in that regard. At the end of the day, we're helping advisors to reduce their cancellations by 20%. That's really what it comes down to. We've issued about 50 million of tax receipts, 51, 52 million of tax receipts, which means that we've created about 25 million for Canadian seniors that didn't know they had cash, right? That they've been able to monetize. And we've also created a whole commission stream because we convert all term to perm, and we don't touch any of the compensation. That stays with the advisor. So it's been beneficial to, if you think about it, to a senior citizen in Canada that didn't know they had an asset. They thought that they had an expense, which was this life insurance policy they paid for 10 or 20 years. So we put money in their pocket through the tax savings. It's beneficial to us because we're doing medical research. When that person passes away, we use the money for medical research and patient support. And it's beneficial to the advisor because he maintains that revenue stream and or increases the revenue stream over time based on that. Also, the advisor picks up the AUM, the assets under management, from a management standpoint, right? Because now you've created new wealth for that client that they didn't have before. And for the life insurance companies, at the end of the day, we're keeping that business on the books. So it's a win-win-win all around at the end of the day. And couple that with our proactive approach to helping make things happen, our innovative leadership approach, it comes back to the golden rule. If you have the goal, you can make the rules. It's
Absolutely.
not more, difficult. So that's the story. We do stuff from coast to coast. I do a lot of public speaking. I've spoken at the Abacus schools. I'm speaking this year. Actually, I'm starting to speak for some of the carriers. I've been invited to be keynote speaker to some of their private sessions with their top performers and/or top clients. So the word is starting to get out, and thanks to people like yourself, who you've been tremendous supporters. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. What I'd like to maybe ask a final question about, Joe, is that you said that there's a lot of people, you probably actually do only 1 in 5 policies that are presented to you. Where does this fit in the Canadian context? Who are the right, which people are the right fit? Who does it work for? And conversely, who does it not work for?
Yeah, so it's an excellent question, and we get that all the time. So people say, well, how old do they have to be, right? Or what's the longevity? And what I explain is we have an IRR target here. So think of it as a seesaw. If your premiums are higher, to get an IRR, you need to have shorter longevity. If your premiums are lower, you can afford longer longevity to get the same IRR. So my youngest donor is 57 years old, but he had a shortened life expectancy. My oldest donor is 80 years old without any medical issues. But 80, if you look at the tables, they're going to live to 86, 7, whatever, 8, right? So it's a function of the longevity metric coupled with the cost, Mike, of what the product is going to be, because we convert everything from term to perm, right? I don't want the risk that a person passes away and the term policy is expired after we paid for 10 years,
Yeah,
right? So it's always this seesaw that we're playing with.
yeah. Uh, Obviously, the person in question should want to have a charitable donation, and that should be important to them. But also, it's the financial metrics. It's got to work for them. It's got to work for you
Right.
as an organization, for sure.
Yeah, and I didn't really get into the metrics on their side, but if you take a back of the envelope rule of thumb, let's take $1 million death benefit. If it fits our IRR, the tax receipt is going to be approximately 500,000. Okay. So you had $1 million term policy you were throwing in the garbage, Mike, because you don't need it anymore. You now get a tax receipt, you donate it, you get a tax receipt for 500,000 ish. Okay. It's always an ish number. We take over payment responsibility for the premium. So you no longer have a responsibility to pay the premiums, which you were paying every year up until that point. That tax receipt is good for 6 years, current year plus 5. Okay. And it's good. And so it can be used if you're filing with a spouse, it can be used by the higher of the two income earners. So even though you're the owner of the policy and you got the tax receipt, you can give it to your spouse. Okay. And she can use it or he can use it. That's number one. Number two, it can be used to offset the meltdown of an RRSP or a RIF. We have a lot of seniors that take money out of their RRSP and RIF tax free because they use the tax receipt. It's a credit on the personal side and it's a deduction on the corporate side. Okay. So they use that to offset, if it's on the personal side, they're using that to offset the taxes payable on an RRSP or RIF withdrawal. So very, very useful. And you can slice it and dice it and use it. You don't have to use it like every year. You can use it all in one shot. You can use it in year 3, 4, 5, whatever you want to do. So it's a very effective planning tool. And I've had a lot of seniors say to me, now I can go and give money to my kids for their house. Now I can go on that. My very first donor, Bill, and I took him to lunch in Toronto. I came from outside of Toronto, and he said, "Just so you understand, I can now take my wife on a cruise with the tax savings." Okay, and his wife actually, he's passed away since. When he was passing away, his wife basically said he was very happy to know that he had benefited, his family had benefited up front because the tax receipt is issued up front, not when he dies. And then secondly, that now that he was creating a medical legacy, right? He felt really good. Yes, there's a financial piece up front, but long term, there's a medical legacy. And everybody likes to help people. Everybody wants to know that they're doing good, right? So this is an opportunity where it's good for you and your family, and it's good for the rest of the community.
Nice. That's amazing. Joseph Galli, thank you so much for coming on and being a guest here. If people want to get a hold of you, we will put your contact information, email or website in
Thank
the
you.
description here on this video. And we really look forward to seeing you again, possibly at a next event, or, if you're in the same town I am or I to you, then I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. Just as an FYI and a shout out, we're actually hosting 100 to 150 of the top researchers in the world May 22nd, 23rd in Vancouver, in conjunction with all the Vancouver hospitals there, plus our other partners across the country. So I will be there that week, and we're hosting, we've got a really great roster. The first day is a CE day, continuing education day for all the docs and surgeons. And the second day is a patient doctor day where they get a chance to rub elbows and meet the Wayne Gretzky's of the industry, basically. That's how I look at it. So thanks, Mike. Look forward to seeing you. And thank you for the opportunity to be with you today.
Awesome. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.